This city is not Kursk, nor is it Kiev. This city is Stalingrad. Stalingrad.
Hello! In this video, I want to review a famous movie from the early 2000s called Enemy at the Gates. And I actually really like the movie, despite the fact that the movie has some flaws, especially if I were to judge it from a historical perspective, from the perspective of a historical accuracy. And from what I saw online, parts of the internet really strongly dislike this movie, and some people are even convinced that the movie is anti-communist propaganda, which to an extent it is, but definitely not in a bad way. I mean, all reasonable people will agree that legitimate criticisms of the Red Army and of Stalinism are to be made. Like, even there are even many communists that view Soviet communism as something bad, something that did not follow the ideals that it was supposed to. For example, Tito developed an entire branch of communism that was anti-Soviet. But I digress. So, to explain the premise of the movie follows the protagonist, a shepherd from the Urals called Vasily Zaitsev, who was a real historical figure, but this movie is just loosely inspired by real events. And in this movie, we follow this famous Soviet sniper that is engaged in a cat and mouse game against a German sniper, a very ruthless Bavarian nobleman sent to Stalingrad in order to kill Vasily Zaitsev, that has become a symbol of the Soviet resistance against the Germans. And the movie also presents us with a love triangle between Zaitsev, Danilov, and a female sniper, also a Soviet girl, actually a Jewish girl. And I was not bothered by the love triangle. I actually think that in a way it even, maybe you could say, contributes to the movie. It gives depth to the characters in some way. But for example, I also want to address some flaws in the movie that, in eyes of the many, make it anti-communist propaganda. Okay, so in the beginning of the movie, there is a sequence in which a Soviet commander tells the infantry, if the man in front of you is killed, pick up their rifle and continue to fight. Now, this was obviously made to illustrate that in certain areas of the front, the Soviet military was not well equipped. But okay, some argue that the movie actually implies that some Soviet soldiers did not even have rifles. Now, that is absurd, and that is true only of the Russian Imperial Army in World War I. But I'm willing to be charitable towards this movie because I actually liked it. It had good action sequences, very good performances, and overall it was a very interesting movie. One of the few Western movies made about Stalingrad. But okay, to be charitable towards the movie, what was the movie aiming at with that sequence? The movie was probably referring to munition shortages that were present in 1941 in many segments of the front, because Hitler's attack really did surprise the Soviets. Stalin was expecting that Hitler might attack in 1943, but not in 1941. Then some people are also very upset with the fact that we see this sequence in which the Soviet secret services, NKVD soldiers, shoot down the Red Army infantry that was retreating from their positions. Now, this is a reference to the Order 227. Stalin proclaimed that now not a step back, that Soviets have already lost enough territory and that now it's time not to retreat. Now, I do agree with the criticism that it was mostly officers that got shot, not just ordinary infantry. Now, okay, I don't think that the fact that the infantry wasn't shot, it wasn't done maybe out of like humanity of the Soviet system. It was done simply because they were lacking in infantry, and it wouldn't really be logical to kill their own infantry just for retreating. So yeah, they did primarily kill their commanders. But then again, I do think that some people are too quick to call this movie like anti-Soviet, or I don't know, anti-Russian, anti-communist, whatever you want to call it, because the movie, at least in my opinion, it never gives a clear answer to the question, was all this Red Army brutality actually justified? Most people would agree that Order 227 at this point was needed. Like, my take on Stalin is that sometimes the best way to defeat a psychopath like Hitler is to have another psychopath on your side. Now, after World War II, I do think that definitely some Stalinist tendencies became a great disadvantage to the Soviet people, as they did before World War II, like during the Stalinist purges even. But yeah, I mean, I do agree with the criticism that Soviet infantry wasn't killed for retreating in most cases, but there is an interesting anecdote from the siege of Leningrad that illustrates that Soviet infantry often was killed by the Red Army if disobedient. So in Leningrad, Germans used Soviet hostages as human shields, and those soldiers that complained about shooting their own civilians because they were used as human shields, those soldiers were all shot because Stalin gave the order to Zhukov, like, make a list of everybody that complained and kill them. Yeah, now was that necessary to win the war? Maybe it even was. But yeah, all in all, I definitely wouldn't say that this movie is Western propaganda. I mean, propaganda is a bit of a loaded term. This movie is definitely critical of the Stalinist regime, but the criticism is justified, and in the end, some people believe that the monologue that one of the characters gives is kind of a cheap critique of communism, but I wouldn't agree with it. I have my own interpretation of that, but I don't want to spoil the movie, so I'm not going to tell you what happens at the end. And this movie finishes with an epic duel between the Soviet and the German sniper, and I actually really liked how they portrayed the German sniper. So the guy, on the one hand, is an absolute psychopath, willing to kill children even if necessary, but on the other hand, he has a code of honor, and he refused to leave from Stalingrad before the final duel, even though he was ordered by the Nazi generals to withdraw. He decided to stay and find Zaitsev, his main enemy of the movie. And yeah, all in all, I would definitely recommend this movie. I disagree with this idea that it's propaganda. I mean, it's a propaganda to an extent that it's critical of the Stalinist regime, but I also agree with this saying that it's almost impossible to make a war movie without some ideology in it. So by definition, most war movies are some kind of propaganda. You need to take sides if you make a war movie. And yeah, all in all, I do highly recommend this movie. I do recognize some of its flaws, but then again, like, name me a Hollywood historical movie that's 100% historically accurate. I mean, some of the best historical movies are not really that accurate, like Braveheart or Gladiator. Okay, that's all for today, and don't forget to drop like, share, and subscribe.